This is Dawn.
And this is Cindy.
Secret meeting.
If we focus on what is real, to me, the Republic is real. The rest is an illusion that we keep on buying into. You know, this is not to negate what Bobby has said, it's really supporting it, but a little reorientation. We can't fix it, and you see, that's the game that everybody's been sucked into. You know, rallying against what's wrong with it, rallying against what, you know, we have to do this to fix it. If we put all of our creative capacity into focusing on what's real and simply building it, you know, it's like that old movie, you know, Field of Dreams, build it and they will come. That's what we're doing. We are building it and they will come. That's why it doesn't matter if there's 4 or 40 here or 400,000. They will come. Let's just keep building it systematically. Not one person at the national level, and I have the privilege to interact with some of those people, including Tim Turner occasionally, and otherwise, they're working every single day, you know, and in spite of the, you know, crap that some people are trying to throw, slinging mud and deleterious, you know, pronunciation, whatever. It's not that way at all, from my point of view. It's happening daily. So what we can do in the California Republic, and those of you who traveled and spent your money to be here, get linked to that, and then you take it back to your local assembly. That's what, like Bobby said, this should be reporting, you know, interactive, you know, in effect socializing, but social networking in the sense of what we can do with 40 or 50 people who are able to come here and then take it back to our counties. Is chaos, they are very systematically organized, you know, locally, nationally, and globally. But that organization is breaking apart, you know, because we are collectively, not just what we're doing in the Republic, but globally, people are withdrawing their consent.
And galactically,
you know,
too, according to that.
And galactically. So consent is synonymous with contract. When you contract with something, you are participating in it, you are bound by it by contract in the basis of law. And in my study of law over 20 years, I've boiled it down to one thing. All law is contract. So the issue is what we call the Constitution that most people are rallying against, or we're not having constitutional government or what have you. It is the similitude of a constitution based on reverse imaging, you know, smoke and mirrors, and it is nothing more than we collectively and individually have contracted to a commercial corporate enterprise in all that that entails. What does it entail? Look around you, everything. So when you know, nobody has joined a republic. You've simply redeclared who and what you are. You've signed a Declaration of Sovereign Rights and a Juro Covenant. You've joined the Juro body, which is the body of law that is constituted and assembled in republic form. And you've declared your individual sovereign rights. Then collectively we came together last November and declared, issued a declaration of sovereign intent collectively. So that is the basis of it. So yeah, we use those words member and join, but those are misnomers. We are not a member, we are standing in capacity. You know, so learn to reorient your languaging. What does that mean to stand in capacity? It means to stand holding the law on the land. Because as Paul said, we've been lifted off the land, bonded into something called a civil body, which goes back 2,000 plus years into Roman civil law.
Is it going?
It's going.
Okay?
I'm oppressed.
Okay, now, fight me. Come on, fight me, man. Fight me.
Gosh, you're strong for a little thing.
For an old lady, she's pretty strong.
I
Just
know.
plain back.
I know.
I hate it when women kick me.
Okay, now what I want you to do is, I want you to go see that beautiful star stripe, that shirt over there.
Yes.
I want you to, I'm pushing on him really hard, right?
Yes.
I want you to go over and I want you to go over and shake hands with that guy.
I can't.
Come on.
Val, you're hurting me.
That's the difference. have vision, and when you go for vision, you stop fighting. When you're fighting the forces, you're always trying to stand up and you're trying to fight that force. And you spend your time fighting that force. When you make up your mind that you're going to do something, you just go do it. And he'll tell you, I was pushing hard.
I think when you're fighting, you're adding to their force.
You do, because
Right.
as he struggles, I'm pushing harder to make sure that he can't get up.
Absolutely.
California Republic was established by men standing on the land, establishing a republic based on the land that was ceded from Mexico at the end of the 1848 Mexican-American War. Okay, California did not enter the United States as a territory. It went straight from ceded land under international treaty ending a war to establishing itself as a republic. That was 1849. Between the 1850s, or just say the 1850s and the 1860s, of course, few things happened in the 1860s. We're aware of the Civil War and all the things that was the pivot point of creating the corporation. By the early 1870s, there was something that was enacted in New York and London and California called the Judicature Laws, spelled Judicature. These are very important. The reason they're important is what the Judicature Acts, really not laws, they were acts, did was combine law and equity. Law is the law of the land, the law of the people. We retain the law. So when we talk about notaries in the Republic or county notaries and grand juries, these are the two most fundamental building blocks of the people holding the law. Okay, as Michael said, the grand jury, the de jure grand jury, really fulfills that phrase, the buck stops here. This is where the people control their government. You know, and the thing to remember, a lot last year we talked about using the grand jury for issues in the de facto. In the de facto, statutes and codes do apply. So if we're addressing a de facto officer, judicial officer, executive or otherwise, the de jure grand jury has the capacity to review whether they are exceeding the bounds of their authority that are contained within statutes and codes. Statutes and codes do apply to a de facto officer. But at the same time, also within our republic, the de jure grand jury is there to constrain government and or private issues if they come up. So the fundamental building block is the people holding the law through the ability to hold the jury, the grand jury, the notary, and our judicial forum and things like that. So starting in the 1850s through the 1870s was the progression leading towards the 1900s, the 1930s, where everything became commercial in nature and federal rules of civil procedure and things like that. The whole idea was to bring us into a civil containment structure, which is synonymous with what we call the public. So the judicature laws started by beginning to fuse law and equity. Equity is the law of contract, and this is where they get you in the current, what we call de facto courts, is equity contracts. Because no matter what you think you're doing, when you cross into their jurisdiction, the judge has ultimate authority in equity. And he will do what he knows is his requirement to do, which is under public policy, which is to maintain the herd within their constraints in the civil body. So California, in 1872, looked to adopt a civil code, okay, because post-Civil War, the first civil rights acts federally were passed in 1866 and 1871. Why? To start creating that containment of the civil body, giving civil privileges called rights, as opposed to substantive unalienable rights protected by the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. So California, by its original constitution, required that any law passed by the legislature had to be passed on an individual act, not in an aggregate way. by the legislature under lawful constitutional process. But in 1872, they adopted en masse, they were trying, quote unquote, trying to create a civil code for the people in the civil body, and they adopted en masse New York's civil code in one fell swoop. So that's the 1872 California Civil Code was basically the New York Civil Code. So they attached New York to California. New York's Judicature Acts attached itself to the municipality of New Orleans. Does that strike you as unusual? Why? Because New Orleans was the only thing that was lawfully purchased by the United States, remember, the United States federal entity, in what was called the Louisiana Purchase, 1803, from Napoleon, who needed gold to continue his European wars called the Napoleonic Wars. And Napoleon had what was called the Napoleonic Code, which was chapter and verse Roman Civil Code. So the Roman Civil Code is properly established in New Orleans in the United States as a federal entity purchased New Orleans. New York attached the Civil Code that it adopted, which is the same as the California Civil Code, to the municipal structure of New Orleans, thus establishing Roman civil law in New York in the Civil Code, which is equivalent to the California Civil Code. That's why New York is called the Empire State, because this is how they brought the Roman Empire onto North America.
Moving forward on building an intranet for the internal administration of the Republic. So Jason and I will be meeting at my home this week to spend a few days working on that. The other thing that I realize we're going to be needing to do is build an intranet mechanism for the grand jury. Eventually I see it having to look something like domain web for anyone that's familiar with the court system. I don't know if you've seen that. But we'll need a document management system in there that will allow us to manage our cases and our documents and the rosters and the voting and whatever.
Come together in republic, so we're not isolated. So to seek counsel in a way that's appropriate and not believe that you know everything. You know, I know a lot, but I always know what I don't know, and I go to seek counsel and otherwise where I don't know it. Let's say I don't always know that, but as a general rule, that's what I try to do, and not have my ego in the way of thinking I know what I'm doing. Right now we can only deal with California, so we can create a forum in a way, and my purpose in bringing this subject up is to disseminate, because you are here representing the rest of the Republic of California, disseminated the concept and the understanding. Don't proceed on your own if you really don't know what you're doing. Seek counsel amongst us. That's why we're here doing what we're doing. And learn what you need to do, because if you do it correctly, you will get the result that you want. They obviously didn't get the result that they want, did they? Did they get anything, because the judges know when they don't have to even think about it. To them, it's a mosquito on their side that they just swat away, and or they use for negative spin purposes.
So we were at the Republic meeting yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Is that what that was?
And we had a really nice time, and we're not doing our regular format today. There are a couple of, really just one significant news item that Don wants to mention. But one of the discussions at the Republic meeting yesterday was that many things are a distraction, that when we make changes, they need to be made at the core. They need to be made at the foundation in a way that is the problem is fundamental, so the response to the problem and the repair needs to be fundamental, which is really the whole system is kind of polluted.
Right.
Do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah. Well, there's two levels to approach this on. One is that people need to be aware of current events which are actually evidence of the matrix that we live in, the false reality that is maintained by the controlling, ruling elites. So it's important, in my opinion, to stay on top of news events for that reason, to continually point out to people that this is evidence of this controlling structure in order to help people see the need to find the true reality. And then within that true reality, yeah, you want to be building, you want to be doing something in a positive way. You don't want to just be focusing on the negative and say, we got to fight that, because you become what you focus on. So that's not a good thing to continually keep your focus there. You want to be pointing that out as evidence to people that are not aware, so that you can continually be helping people see the true reality. But within that true reality, you need to be building for the future, building truth, building on the land, as Ken was saying, in a true reality, not this false matrix reality. So that there's a dual approach there that I think is valuable.
Sure. And in light of that, would you like to share some things about the events that have been unfolding in Norway?
Yeah, it was kind of spooky to see it happen, because people like Alex Jones had been pointing out how, for a long time, how the next big focus is going to be white Al-Qaeda, and how the whitey is going to be the bad guy. And you have these promo pieces in the mainstream media in America that would show how America is this diverse culture and there's all kinds of races except for maybe a white person in the background. And then there's this talk about how you have to be reporting anybody that needs to be, that looks like there's a threat to the system, and then it's a white person. So as Alex and other people have been saying for a long time, they have always intended to flip this against your average American people and people that are supportive of the Constitution, limited government, etc., etc. Those are now the terrorists, and it's becoming plain that that's what's going on. And then we have this event in Norway, and some of the very interesting setup pieces. Paul Watson actually did a great breakdown in really simple bullet point format about what some of the points are. The ones that occur to me right now was, okay, this shooter guy, number one, first point I'll make is that somebody, I just watched an RT video of a friend of his that said no way in his wildest imagination could he imagine this person doing something. He knew he had religious views, but he didn't ever see him doing anything like this. And he said he suspects that there was brainwashing involved. And he said, there in central Oslo, there's all kinds of groups that can do this. Now, one of the things that we know about this attack that he carried out, it was directed against the young up-and-coming leaders of the ruling party, which was pro-Palestinian. So it's very interesting that the media can spin this guy as being some kind of Al-Qaeda operative, but the reverse is actually true. He had swallowed some Zionist anti-Palestinian propaganda and was mowing down the up-and-coming leaders of the political party that was pro-Palestinian. So very, very interesting. The dangerous thing is how the media can spin this in exactly the opposite way to what was really happening.
Well, I think there's this deep frustration in many people. One thing that's happened is in Europe and the United States, white people, and I almost feel like I need to apologize, but if we can't talk honestly about these things, if we can't identify what's really happening, how can we possibly deal with it with any degree of effectiveness? White people who go to schools and so forth have been taught for a couple generations now that it's wrong to have a lot of children, that you're a bad person if you have a lot of children. And I've been with my daughters when they're expecting babies, and it's freaky, the looks that you get. I mean, it's so wrong, it's so inhuman to not be happy for somebody who's expecting a baby, to judge somebody for a pregnancy. But because we've been taught this, so the population in Europe has been falling in a dangerous way. I mean, that's one reason, one contributing factor to the economies beginning to fail is that there just aren't as many people. When there aren't as many people, there aren't as many people working, there aren't as many people shopping. So what's happened in Europe is the white, if you will, the indigenous population in Europe has been falling significantly. And people who have no compunctions about having a lot of children, who haven't had this education, they just pop babies out. And I realize that sounds a little slanderous, and I truly don't mean it that way. I think the people who are having children are doing the right thing. But people of other races many times have not been fed this line that white people, at least haven't bought it to the degree that white people have, that it's wrong to have children. So, gosh, long term, he who has the most kids wins, right?
But what's really happening beyond that is the controllers are setting up a clash of civilizations, and they want to do that. They want to start World War III. They want to do whatever they can to make the tensions worse between Christians and Muslims, especially.
Right.
So they're going to create the dynamic where the white feels oppressed and feels like he has to do some kind of a backlash thing. I'm really leaning more towards thinking that this guy was under mind control of probably Israeli Mossad type of thing. There's even more evidence that he was a supporter of some very radical Zionist elements. And again, that's the exact opposite of what you're going to hear in the media. You're going to hear that this is Al-Qaeda. So it's a spin, and it's a spin designed to initiate a clash of civilizations on the level of actual warfare and actual physical violence.
Well, that's actually one of my points in talking about who has the most children. I think it's frustrating when you look around your country and you see more people of another race than what in your heart. And these are very fundamental. I mean, these things are almost it's tribal. It cuts to the core of who we are as human beings in many respects. You look around and you see people of another race who do not look like your countrymen. You don't think of them as being your countrymen because they're a different race. And I think in the United States we're more used to a mix, perhaps. And I don't claim to know what it's like to live in Europe, but I'm guessing in Norway, a few generations ago, there probably weren't too many Islamic people living in Norway, and now there's this challenge to and I'm going to call them the indigenous people. Nothing against any Islamic people who have moved to Norway, but that's not where
these are the Vikings, yeah.
Yeah, that's not their place. Their place is the Middle East.
But I see that all that as being beside the point, because this guy did not go out and mow down Muslims. This was a white guy shooting white people.
But he was frustrated about policies regarding Palestinians, right?
We don't even really know that. We know that he was supportive of Zionist policies, which would be anti-Palestinian. Yeah.
I see the education of white people to not have very many people, not have very many children, as another aspect of this vice where we have pressure coming on, not just white people, everybody. we all have pressure coming on us from all sides, and
Well, look,
they want to rupture us.
this was a group of people that were in this camp, that were in the young up and coming political leaders, that were building bridges of support with people of a different religion.
Yeah.
They were doing the right thing. They were having a heart for the other people, the people that didn't look like them. This is what humans are good at naturally, is
Sure.
to build relationships and build bonds and support the underdog, support the oppressed. And then you had someone come in that may have been under mind control and mow these people down. And then the spin of that is exactly the opposite of what happened. You see that this guy, it stirs up hatred. So it never gets pointed out that the people that he was violently against were the ones that are promoting peace.
Sure.
So-
Well, that's the key, is stirring up hatred.
Yeah.
Because I think that what I'm actually trying to say, in case maybe I haven't been very clear, is that this feeling of being threatened in your own country, it does stir up hatred, and you repressed fear becomes hatred, and I think there's a natural fear when you see that your community is changing, the face of your community is changing in a way that you don't understand and can't control, and I think this great mixing up of the world and calling it globalism, but this pressure to move different people groups into different places, it causes us all to lose a part of our identity. I think it causes us to become confused, and I think it sets us off balance and makes us more vulnerable to this kind of thing. And when I, this guy, okay, so, the Muslims allegedly blow up the towers. We don't really believe that, but let's say that it was true for the sake of argument, because this is part of this process. So you have the Muslims blowing up the whites, and then you have whites blowing up people who are being friendly with Muslims because they hate, allegedly, because they hate Muslims. And it's really, so much of this is theater. It's hard to know where reality begins and the lie ends, but you have all this in the mix, and it's intended to create a powder keg, right?
Yeah.
It's intended to make us all angry enough to go out and start to do what this guy did, and once that happens, we're doing the elite's job for them, because they want to kill us off.
Right.
So if we kill each other, we're playing into their hands. If we hate each other, we're playing into their hands. Yeah. So really, when we can love people, look at people with love and understanding and compassion, and not feel the fear and hatred and then feel threatened as they would like for us to, we're a little ahead of the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say if you get around a group that wants to build bridges, you're going in the right direction. If you get involved in a group that wants to build up walls and promote division, that's going in the wrong direction. So just learn to recognize that and build on that reality. And one of the encouraging things I found about the Republic is something that Tim Turner said, that he doesn't really think we have an illegal immigration problem. He says he thinks that we have an economic problem, and the way that the support services are being mismanaged. And people that have paid into the systems rightly resent people getting them for free. It's really not a racial issue, and it's really not an immigration issue. It's an economic issue. So correctly identifying things and building bridges and creating real solutions is the key. And to have this knee-jerk reaction against a whole group of people because you feel threatened, that's playing into the enemy's hands.
But again, the elite engineer these situations.
Mm-hmm. They want us to
in order to make us hate one another.
Yeah. So recognize you're being manipulated, and learn to love, and just it's not about people that want a better life. It's about trying to find solutions to real problems. And
And there is hope, as we learned from
Yeah.
going to the Republic meeting.
Yeah, yeah.
There are good
People
things happening in the
People
world.
that have identified virtually all the problems that we see and more, and have connected all of the dots, and come from various different viewpoints, but recognize that we have been disconnected from our natural common law reality. And the guy that spoke today or yesterday was just really knowledgeable in law. So it's really important to see that this has a whole structure to it that can be successfully applied. But people have to, in order to become a truly sovereign individual, you have a big learning curve about the legal system and how it works. You have to understand what you're up against, and to be able to not fall into the traps that are there of just saying, a magistrate is out of order. That's one example we learned yesterday of something that's actually happened, and foolish people that just think, I know I'm a sovereign, so I can just act like a sovereign and order the judge around. That's not going to get you anywhere. So, important things to learn. There's a lot to learn.
Yeah. And we did watch some good movies this week, but for the most part, we don't remember what they are right now. So maybe
you haven't looked them up.
No, so maybe next week we'll do double Pro Culture or something like that. Maybe we'll do double Dr. Noah too. We missed having him with us this week. We thought he might drive down with us for this meeting, but just didn't work out.
Yeah, I'm excited for him to get to know these people, because we actually had this guy that just, he focused on the legal system, but he totally understands that the medical system is a death machine that is made to be a death machine for very specific, what's the name, the word, the purposes of crunching the numbers to make them come out right. The actuary, the actuarial purposes to the whole medical system. And so many people are compartmentalized and don't realize that they're a part of this death machine. And Dr. Noah knows that, but from a completely different perspective.
Yeah, they want a certain number of people to die.
Yeah.
What did he call the FDA? Do you remember that nickname?
Oh, yeah, that was good.
It's something death.
Yeah. Something death administration. Yeah. Yeah.
So we'll get back with you with what that actually was. But yeah, it's great information yesterday. So thanks for watching us, and hope you enjoyed this little unusual presentation.
Until next week, go in liberty.
Be free.